Picture this. You're lying awake at 3 in the morning, replaying every moment of a relationship that destroyed you. The person who promised forever, the one who made you question your worth, the connection that left you more broken than you've ever been. And in that darkness, a single question tortures you. Why did I have to meet them? Why did the universe put this person in my path? What if I told you that meeting them wasn't a mistake? What if the person who hurt you most was actually placed in your life with surgical precision by forces you don't yet understand? What if your soul knew exactly what it was doing when it drew you towards someone who would shatter you? This sounds insane, I know. It feels like a cruel joke when you're still picking up the pieces. But what I'm about to share will completely transform how you see every painful connection you've ever experienced. Because according to Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, there are no wrong people, only necessary ones. By the end of this video, you're about to discover why your psyche deliberately attracts people who will hurt you, how your unconscious mind uses wrong relationships as a mirror to show you what you can't see about yourself, and most importantly, how recognizing this pattern will liberate you from repeating it. This isn't about justifying toxic behavior or romanticizing pain. This is about understanding the hidden architecture of your destiny and why every person who breaks you is actually building you. But before we dive deep into this revelation, if you're someone who's tired of surface-level self-help and you're ready to explore the profound psychological truths that actually change lives, hit that subscribe button. This channel is for seekers, for people brave enough to look at uncomfortable truths, for anyone who knows there's more to their story than meets the eye. Like this video if you've ever wondered why you keep attracting the same type of person, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Because what we're about to explore together changes everything. Let's start with something you've probably noticed. You keep meeting the same person in different bodies, different names, different faces, but the same emotional signature, the same dynamic, the same ending. Maybe it's the emotionally unavailable one who keeps you chasing. Maybe it's the narcissist who makes you feel special before making you feel small. Maybe it's the person who needs saving, who turns you into their rescuer until you're drowning too. Whatever your pattern is, you've lived it more than once. And every time it happens, you tell yourself, never again. I've learned my lesson. But here's the thing. You haven't learned the lesson. Because the lesson isn't what you think it is. On the surface, we're taught to see these patterns as bad choices, poor judgment, low self-esteem. We're told we need better boundaries, more self-respect, or just to choose better. And yes, those things matter. But they're not the whole story. They're not even close. You see, most people approach their relationship patterns like they're trying to avoid potholes on a road. If you just pay more attention, if you just look where you're going, you won't fall into the same hole twice. But what if the hole isn't something you're falling into by accident? What if you're being pulled toward it by something deep inside you that knows you need to go there? Think about your last painful relationship. Before it fell apart, there were signs, weren't there? Red flags that you saw but ignored. Warnings from friends that you dismissed. A voice inside you that whispered, "This isn't right." While another voice screamed, "But I need this person." You walked in with your eyes open, even if you tell yourself otherwise now. Here's what's really happening, and this is where Jung's genius becomes undeniable. Your psyche isn't trying to make you happy. It's trying to make you whole. And those are not the same thing. Jung discovered what he called the shadow, the repository of everything about ourselves that we've rejected, denied, or never acknowledged. It's not just our dark side. It's every unlived part of us, every quality we've disowned, every piece of our personality that didn't fit the image we needed to maintain. And here's the crucial part. The shadow doesn't stay hidden. It projects itself onto other people. When you meet someone who triggers you intensely, who fascinates you, who you can't stop thinking about even when they're hurting you, that's your shadow staring back at you. They're not actually the wrong person. They're the perfect mirror for what you refuse to see in yourself. That emotionally unavailable person? They're reflecting your own fear of intimacy that you've buried under a story of being so loving and open. That narcissist? They're showing you the grandiosity and need for validation you've never let yourself feel. That person who needs saving? They're the externalization of the wounded child within you that you've never acknowledged. Stop for a moment and think about the person who hurt you most. What quality in them disturbed you the deepest? What did they do that you found most unforgivable? Write it down mentally. Now here's the uncomfortable question. Is that quality completely absent in you, or have you just never given yourself permission to acknowledge it? This isn't about blaming yourself for someone else's bad behavior. It's about recognizing that you didn't attract them randomly. Your unconscious mind, in its infinite wisdom, drew them close because it knew you needed to face something you've been running from your entire life. The universe didn't send you the wrong person. It sent you exactly the person you needed to meet the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. So if the wrong person is actually necessary, what does that say about the concept of finding the right person? This is where things get really interesting and where most relationship advice completely misses the mark. We're obsessed with finding the right person, someone who checks all the boxes, someone compatible, someone who fits into our life seamlessly and makes everything easy. We create lists of what we want in a partner. We swipe through dating apps looking for specific qualities. We ask the universe to send us our soulmate. And underneath all of this is one fundamental assumption, that there exists a person out there who will complete us without challenging us. This is the fairy tale we're sold. The right person will just feel easy. You'll know when you know. When you meet the one, everything will click into place, and any relationship that requires work, that brings up pain, that makes you confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, that's not the one. That's the wrong person. Next. But Jung would say this entire framework is backwards, because the idea of the right person is actually an unconscious fantasy about finding someone who will never make us face our shadow, someone who will collude with our false self-image, someone who will let us stay asleep. Jung wrote about what he called the process of individuation, the journey of becoming your whole, authentic self. And here's what makes this relevant. Individuation doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in crisis. It happens when you're forced to confront the parts of yourself you've kept in exile. The people we call wrong are actually agents of individuation. They're the catalysts that crack open your carefully constructed identity and force you to look at what's underneath. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it's devastating. But it's also the only way you evolve. Think about metamorphosis. A caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly through gentle encouragement and positive affirmations. It literally dissolves. Its entire structure breaks down into primordial soup inside the chrysalis before it can reorganize into something new. That dissolution, that's what the wrong person does to you. They're not destroying you, they're initiating your transformation. And here's the really profound part. You can't skip this. You can't read enough books, or go to enough therapy sessions, or develop enough self-awareness to avoid the necessity of being broken down by someone else. Because there are truths about yourself that you simply cannot see alone. You need the mirror of a relationship, especially a painful relationship, to reveal them. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron says that people who disturb us are our greatest teachers. Jung would absolutely agree, because the person who triggers your deepest wounds isn't randomly pushing your buttons. They're showing you exactly where your work is. So what does this mean for you, right now, with the wounds you're carrying? It means you need to radically reframe what happened. That person who devastated you wasn't a detour from your path. They were the path. They were the necessary initiation into a deeper version of yourself. But here's the critical distinction, and please hear this. Understanding that someone was necessary doesn't mean you should stay with them. It doesn't mean you should forgive abuse. It doesn't mean their behavior was acceptable. It means you extract the lesson, honor what they came to teach you, and then move forward with the integration of that lesson. Ask yourself, what did this person make me feel about myself? What wounds did they open that were already there, buried? What part of my personality did I have to suppress to be with them? And does that suppressed part actually need expression? Who was I afraid of becoming? And is that fear protecting me or limiting me? I want to pause here because what I'm sharing is challenging some deeply held beliefs about love and relationships. And you might be feeling resistance. That's natural. That's actually a sign that we're getting somewhere real. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the pattern you keep repeating in relationships? What's the type of person you keep attracting, even though you tell yourself you've learned the lesson? Because I guarantee you're not alone, and naming the pattern is the first step toward understanding its purpose. And if what I'm saying is resonating, if you're starting to see your painful relationships through a new lens, do me a favor and hit that like button. It tells me you're ready for the deeper truths that most people aren't willing to face. We're building towards something transformative here, but you have to stick with me, because the most powerful insight is still coming. Now we need to talk about something that sounds either completely woo-woo or disturbingly deterministic, depending on your perspective. The idea that meeting certain people is part of your destiny, not in some vague, everything happens for a reason way, but in a very specific, psychologically precise way. When we talk about destiny, most people think about predetermined outcomes, fate, a script that's already written. And that feels disempowering, like we're just puppets acting out a story we have no control over. So we reject the idea of destiny entirely and insist that everything is a choice, everything is random, everything is within our control. But both of these perspectives miss what Jung was actually pointing to. Because when Jung talked about the self, the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, he described it as having a kind of intelligence, an agenda. Your self knows what you need to become whole, and it will orchestrate situations and encounters to push you toward that wholeness, whether your conscious mind agrees or not. In other words, destiny isn't some external force controlling your life. It's your own deepest nature asserting itself, trying to bring you home to your authentic self. And sometimes, bringing you home requires bringing you to your knees first. Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal a hidden order beneath the apparent chaos of life. And synchronicity operates most powerfully in relationships. The people who show up at pivotal moments in your life aren't accidents. They're expressions of what your psyche is trying to work through. You meet someone and feel an instant, overwhelming connection. Chemistry, we call it. Fate, some say. Love at first sight. But from a Jungian perspective, that instant recognition is your unconscious mind recognizing itself in projected form. You're being pulled toward this person because they're carrying something you need to integrate, something you need to face, something you need to become. And this is why you can't think your way out of these patterns. You can't make a logical list of green flags and red flags and expect that to override the deeper pull of the psyche, because your unconscious is operating with a different set of priorities. It's not asking, will this person make me happy? It's asking, will this person help me become who I need to be? This is destiny, not predestination, but a kind of psychological gravity. Your shadow draws you toward people who embody what you've rejected. Your unlived potential draws you toward people who challenge you to expand. Your wounds draw you toward people who will hurt you in familiar ways until you finally learn to heal yourself instead of seeking healing from others. Think about the timing of when the wrong people entered your life. Were you at a crossroads? Were you stuck in some way? Were you living a life that looked good on the surface but felt hollow underneath? I'd be willing to bet that every devastating relationship you've experienced came at a moment when your soul was ready for transformation. even if your ego was terrified of it. That person didn't show up to derail you. They showed up because you summoned them, unconsciously, to do the work of breaking open whatever needed to break. Your task now isn't to regret meeting them. It's to ask, what needed to break in me? What needed to die so something new could be born? What was I being initiated into? Because here's what's true. You can resist this process and suffer through the same patterns for decades. Or you can surrender to it, extract the teaching, and actually evolve. The people will keep coming until the lesson is learned. That's not punishment. That's your destiny trying to fulfill itself through you. Let me share something Jung discovered that changes everything. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with our own projected unconscious material. Romantic love, especially the passionate, can't live without you kind, is almost always shadow work in disguise. We romanticize the intensity, the passion, the feeling of finally finding someone who gets us, someone who sees us in a way nobody else does. And when it's good, it feels like the most real, most alive thing we've ever experienced. We think, this is it, this is love in its truest form. But then it turns. The person who seemed to complete us starts to suffocate us, or abandon us, or betray us, or reveal themselves to be nothing like who we thought they were. And we're left devastated, confused, feeling like we were deceived, like we loved someone who didn't exist. And you know what? That's exactly right. You did love someone who didn't exist, because the person you fell in love with was never actually them. It was your own unconscious, wearing their face. Jung called this projection, and it's the mechanism behind every intense attraction and every painful betrayal. When we project, we're taking internal psychological content, qualities, feelings, potentials that belong to us, and experiencing them as if they exist in another person. You see someone as mysterious and deep, and you're fascinated. But what you're really encountering is your own unexplored depths that you've never given yourself permission to access. You see someone as confident and powerful, and you're drawn to them. But what you're really experiencing is your own unlived power that you've been too afraid to claim. You see someone as creative and free-spirited, and you want to be close to that. But what you're really wanting is to liberate those qualities in yourself. The wrong person is often the person who carries your most powerful projections. And when those projections inevitably collapse, when you realize they're not actually the god or goddess you imagined, the pain isn't about losing them. It's about losing the fantasy of wholeness you thought they would provide. But here's the gift hidden in that devastation. When the projection collapses, you have a choice. You can find someone new to project onto and repeat the cycle. Or you can reclaim what you projected, integrate it into yourself, and become more whole. Most people choose option 1 over and over, but the few who choose option 2, they transform their entire experience of love and relationship. Go back to that person who broke you. What did you see in them that captivated you? What qualities did they seem to possess that you desperately wanted to be close to? Those qualities, that's what you came to claim for yourself. That's what your psyche was trying to show you. Not in them, but in you. If you saw them as confident, your work is to discover your own confidence. If you saw them as free, your work is to liberate yourself. If you saw them as deep and complex, your work is to explore your own depths. They weren't the destination. They were the signposts pointing you back to yourself. And this is why meeting them was part of your destiny. Because you couldn't have seen these qualities in yourself directly. You needed them reflected back to you in another person first. You needed to fall in love with these qualities in external form so you could eventually recognize them as your own unlived potential. Now I need you to stay with me because we're about to reach the core insight that ties all of this together. Everything I've shared, the patterns, the shadow, the projections, the destiny principle, is building toward one transformative realization that will change how you see every relationship for the rest of your life. The people who hurt you weren't wrong for you. You weren't wrong for choosing them. The pain wasn't a mistake. It was all necessary. But necessary for what? This is the question that unlocks everything. Most people think the point of relationships is to find happiness, companionship, love. And yes, these things matter. But from a deeper psychological and spiritual perspective, the true purpose of a relationship, especially a painful relationship, is to make the unconscious conscious, to reveal to you what you couldn't see about yourself, to force you to integrate what you've rejected, to push you toward wholeness. And here's the paradox that most people miss. You can only find the right person after you've been through the wrong ones. Because the right person isn't someone who completes you. The right person is someone who meets you in your wholeness after you've done the work of integrating what all the wrong ones came to teach you. You can't skip steps. You can't bypass the shadow work. You can't avoid the painful mirrors. You have to go through them. And every time you do, every time you extract the lesson instead of just repeating the pattern, you become more yourself, more whole, more conscious, less likely to project, less likely to attract the same teaching in a new form. So here it is. Here's the truth that changes everything. Meeting the wrong person isn't a failure of judgment or a cosmic mistake. It's your soul's way of showing you the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to face. Every person who breaks your heart is actually breaking open your consciousness, revealing the work you still need to do, the parts of yourself you still need to reclaim, the wholeness you still need to embody. You don't need to find the right person. You need to become the whole person. And the people you call wrong are the ones brave enough, whether they know it or not, to show you what wholeness requires. They're the mirrors, the catalysts, the initiators into your own depth. This means that everyone you've loved and lost, everyone who's hurt you, everyone you've blamed for derailing your life, they were all working in service of your becoming. Not consciously, perhaps, but archetypally. They played the exact role your psyche needed them to play at that moment in your journey. And when you see this, really see this, the bitterness transforms into gratitude. The victimhood transforms into empowerment. The story of, why did this happen to me, becomes, what am I being asked to become through this? This is destiny. Not a predetermined script, but a psychological imperative toward wholeness that expresses itself through every encounter, every attraction, every heartbreak. Your soul knows where you need to go, and it will use relationships, especially painful relationships, to get you there. What's now possible for you with this understanding? Everything. Because you're no longer at the mercy of patterns you don't understand. You're no longer a victim of bad luck or poor choices. You're a conscious participant in your own becoming. The next time you find yourself attracted to someone who seems wrong for you, you can pause and ask, what is this attraction trying to show me about myself? What am I projecting? What am I avoiding in myself that I'm trying to find in them? And you can choose to do the work directly instead of outsourcing it to a relationship. When you find yourself in a painful dynamic, you can ask, what is this mirroring? What wound is being touched? What part of me needs healing or integration? And you can extract the teaching without needing the relationship to continue. And when you look back at all the people who've hurt you, you can reframe the entire narrative. They weren't obstacles to your happiness. They were midwives to your transformation. And every single one of them, even the ones who devastated you, deserves your gratitude for playing their part in your journey toward wholeness. This doesn't mean the pain wasn't real. It was. This doesn't mean you should tolerate abuse or stay in toxic situations. You shouldn't. But it means you can harvest wisdom from every experience instead of just carrying wounds. You can integrate instead of just suffering. You can become instead of just endure. So we come full circle to where we began. You, lying awake at 3 a.m, asking why you had to meet that person. Now you know. Not because they were the right person disguised as the wrong one, but because they were the exact person you needed to meet the parts of yourself you couldn't see any other way. What pattern have you been repeating? What quality in others disturbs you most? What type of person keeps showing up in your life, no matter how many times you say, never again? These aren't random questions. These are breadcrumbs leading you toward your shadow, toward your work, toward your wholeness. The journey continues, but now you're awake to what's actually happening. You're no longer a passive victim of attraction and heartbreak. You're an active participant in the most important work of your life, becoming who you actually are beneath all the projections, defenses, and false images. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the biggest lesson a wrong person taught you? What did you discover about yourself through the pain of a relationship that didn't work out? Let's build a community of people who are brave enough to transform their wounds into wisdom. Thank you for staying with me through this deep dive into Jungian psychology and the hidden purpose of painful relationships. If this perspective resonated with you, if it's helping you make sense of your own journey, subscribe to this channel. This is where we explore the profound truths that actually change lives. No surface-level advice, no easy answers, just the real psychological and spiritual work that transformation requires. Hit that like button if you're ready to stop seeing yourself as a victim of bad relationships and start seeing yourself as a student of your own becoming. And share this video with someone who's still suffering from a wrong person they can't let go of. They need to hear this message. Remember, there are no wrong people, only necessary ones. The universe isn't punishing you with difficult relationships. It's educating you. And every person who breaks you is actually the one brave enough to show you what needs breaking, so something truer can emerge. Stay curious, keep seeking, and trust that every person you've ever loved, no matter how it ended, was exactly who they needed to be to make you who you're becoming. The journey continues.